Oh, hey, welcome to the basement. Let's get right to work. It is the day where reading number 2 is due, and we'll have another reading response, so let's get right to it. The assignment will be located under Freedom to Read response number 2, Capture the Essence. This is the essentially worksheet that will be pushed out to you so that each of you has a copy. Here's what I'm asking you to do in a nutshell. You are halfway through your reading. The reading calendar will stretch out a little bit here now that we're started. The next reading number 3, that will be posted during class, that's due a week from today. So we finally have more of a week gap between our reading assignments here. And just so you know, this response work that you do today is also due a week from today. So if you only get one of the 3 tables that I'm about to show you done during today, that's okay. I think 2 would be great, 3 would be awesome, but any tables that you don't complete, you could do in an extended time block. That's built into the size of the assignment. You don't have to try to get it all done in today's block, especially because today's assignment is going to be a little bit more in depth than last week where you're making your cast, because I'm asking you to think about you at halfway through your text. It's time to start looking at this text a little bit more critically and being able to explain what is the essence of it. Essence here is going to apply to some things that I've asked you to notice in every one of the texts that we have read. And they're essentially these 2 things: the author's style and technique. So, what it is about the writing that actually creates effects that we can recognize. If you think about choices back in The Great Gatsby, F. Scott Fitzgerald's use of symbol and language, and Nick as an unreliable narrator that allows us to see that his motives are also kind of up in the air. Same thing that Salinger does with Holden Caulfield when we looked at why he would change from a third-person perspective for that character to ultimately choosing first person for the final novel that would become The Catcher in the Rye. We talk about that in the stagecraft of Death of a Salesman and how the colors and the lighting allows us to see the way that Willy Loman saw his past in color and with positive vibes, while the way he looks at his neighborhood now, the buildings tower over his house, showing how much American progress around him is really starting to get to him as his health and life decline. So those are all techniques, and the technique that you choose is going to be specific and individual to the type and style of the text that you have. The second thing, and they are very much linked. I almost couldn't do it in any of those examples that I just described. I started talking about Death of a Salesman and the stagecraft and the lighting there, and I immediately started to talk about why those overpowering buildings also carried a message about Willy Loman's feelings and view on the American dream. We should be doing that too. And so the whole point here is that I'm not reading the text that you are. I can say that in this particular classes group, it doesn't always happen. A lot of times people will pick books that I have read, but you haven't. So I haven't read any of these. I don't know how the reading is going without you giving me a detailed examination of what you are reading. And I can read between the lines and say, that is someone who knows what they're talking about and knows what the book is talking about. All right, so you're going to be picking 3 passages from the book. It's essentially an evidence collector. Let's take a look at it. I'll reread the directions, and those directions will cover a lot of the overview that I just gave. Capture the essence. Now that you should be at or approaching the halfway point in your reading, you should have a good feel about what makes your text distinct in style and or message. To demonstrate that you are paying attention to those ideas, Choose and expand on some directly cited passages that capture the essence of the text you are reading. You're going to do that 3 times. Your cited evidence goes here. It's a quote with the citation. You just did this a million times for your Westmore card game assessment, so I know you can figure out how to put a quote and a citation in a box. That's what you're doing there. And then give context, and this is going to be important because I don't have any context. So you'll need to describe the scene that you're lifting the passage from. Make sure to indicate, if it's dialogue, who is speaking. If it's the narrator describing, say that. And then related events. Often a moment is significant, but that significance is somewhat highlighted by the event that may happen directly after the passage that you choose, or events that happened before that led up to this moment. So if you have a little bit of a timeline that's necessary to understand this passage, put that in there as well. These black bullet points all represent have-tos, as in you need to do all of that in this box. When we move to the essence, that gets a little bit more up in the air. So I have check boxes instead to indicate that you could do all or just one of these. But the size of this box is a pretty good indicator of how much writing you should be doing here. So when you look up at the passage that's up here, you could choose to describe the author's style. So if there's a technique like symbolism or particular word choice or style of dialogue that is present not just in that cited evidence that you just chose, but throughout that whole half of a novel that you've already read. And say, like, this happens a lot in this author's writing. She seems to like the use of short clipped sentences in her dialogue. That's what you're doing when you describe the author's style as it is present in the quote that you're showing. You could explain the captured moment's significance, why this is a key illumination into the author's ideas, or an essential moment, maybe a climactic moment where a character makes a crucial decision, where a character turns his or her back on beliefs that she may have had before. Something that makes it so that the reason you chose it is because the moment was very memorable, because it was very significant. And then finally, you could comment on the text message or theme and how that is present. All right. So this is an American literature class, and these all are texts that should in some way be either written by an American or take place in American life, have America as the setting. So even if it's a wildly dystopian future or a look into our historical past, all of the texts are a 20th century or 21st century author writing it. And so that author has ideas about society and about the self, and maybe...
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Hi, Siri. And maybe even America. All right? And so if your text is saying something like that, give it a stab. See if you can explain what you believe the author's view on society or our place in it, or even an American ideal that you recognize. Think about the way that Gatsby covered greed and wealth, or the way in which Tim O'Brien's Things They Carried covered war and sacrifice and storytelling. And see if you've got another text on your hand that has some elements of the American dream in it. All right, so you're working on this today, and if you don't finish, that's fine, because you have a whole week to do it, and your next reading is due a week from today as well. So if you do finish this, then that is what you're doing once you finish this. Of course, free to take reasonable breaks during class time as well, and best of luck.